We trust our neighbors more than strangers. We wave at them, hear their footsteps through the walls, see their lights flicker at night. But sometimes, the people living closest to us are the ones we should fear the most. They watched us. This happened when Adam was 15, right before his family moved out of the first house they'd ever lived in. For the 15 years they'd been there, his family and the neighbors next door had kept to themselves. It was one of those street dynamics where you nodded politely and nothing more. The house next door was occupied by a man and his two sons, Eric and Todd. Bizarrely, for all the time they lived 10 feet from each other, Adam and his younger brother had maybe exchanged a single sentence with them. They were like ghosts the family occasionally saw mowing the lawn. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Adam, who was 5 years older than his brother, was shooting hoops with him in their driveway. The ball clanked off the rim, and that's when Adam saw Todd walking over from their yard. Todd was about his age, maybe a little older. He stopped just on the edge of their driveway. "Hey," he said, his voice flat. "Is it true you guys are moving?" Adam, being the older one, did the talking. "Yeah, in a couple of months," he told him, dropping the ball. Todd nodded slowly, looking out at the road. He didn't seem particularly sad, just curious. Then he dropped the strange invitation. "Me and Eric are going down to the river tomorrow to shoot BB guns in the woods. You want to come?" Adam didn't have anything going on, and it felt like a weird final chance to be neighborly. "Sure, why not?" he said. His little brother, always trying to tag along, piped up, "Can I come too?" Todd just shrugged. "Yeah." And with that, he turned and walked back into his house without another word. The next day, around an hour before the sun would start setting, the doorbell rang. Since their parents were home, Adam and his brother scrambled to answer it. They hadn't told him they were going out with the neighbors, especially not to shoot anything. Eric and Todd were standing there, both dressed head to toe in camouflage gear. Todd was carrying a heavy-looking dark green duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Walking down the sidewalk with them was surreal. They moved with a strange, almost military precision. Adam and his brother kept making eye contact, holding back nervous giggles at how seriously the neighbors were taking this. It felt like they were walking with characters from a bad movie. They got to the wooded area near the creek a few blocks away. The air was thick and damp, and the trees there were dense. They'd hardly spoken a word the whole way. Todd dropped the duffel bag on the muddy ground and unzipped it. Eric, meanwhile, walked up to a thick branch on a dead tree and snapped it off with unnecessary force, throwing it into the sluggish river. The sound of the snap was loud in the sudden silence. Adam and his brother stopped finding it funny. Todd pulled out 2 long-barreled pistols. He handed one to Adam and one to his brother. "Wait, these are BB guns?" Adam asked. The weight in his hand felt wrong. Todd looked at him dead in the eye, his expression unreadable. "No, they're real guns." Before Adam could process that, Eric had already grabbed another weapon. It looked like a small rifle from the bag. He leveled it across the river, and the quiet of the woods was instantly shattered by 3 sharp cracks. He was firing at the trunks of the trees on the opposite bank. The sound alone made Adam's blood run cold. His mind was a complete messenger, confusion, and a sudden sharp spike of adrenaline. He snatched the pistol out of his little brother's grip and threw both guns back into the duffel bag. "We're leaving," Adam said, his voice coming out shaky but firm. "We aren't comfortable with this." Eric stopped shooting and both of them turned. The silence that followed was heavy and instantly hostile. Their faces were wiped clean of all expression, but their eyes held something that looked like a mixture of anger and cold contempt. "You fucking pussies!" one of them yelled. Maybe Eric, as Adam and his brother backed away, turning toward the road. They didn't look back until they were out of the woods and walking fast, almost running down the sidewalk. Adam felt sick to his stomach. These weren't just weird kids. They were genuinely dangerous. He made his brother promise to never speak to them again. That night at the dinner table, they told their parents the boys were really strange, but left out the part about the real guns. They just wanted to forget it. Around 5 a.m., Adam woke up. He was suddenly freezing. A blast of cold night air was hitting him in the face. His bedroom window, which he always kept slightly ajar, was wide open. He instinctively sat up, peering out into the blackness of the yard. Then, Something hard and cold pressed against the back of his skull. He froze. He didn't scream. He didn't jump. He just stayed perfectly still, the fear locking every muscle in his body. He heard a whisper right behind his head. It was Todd. "If you ever tell anyone about the guns, or that we were even out there, or that I was here right now, I'll come back and I will kill you and your whole family." Todd was whispering, but the threat was perfectly clear and utterly serious. It wasn't a kid trying to be tough. It was pure, cold malice. Adam managed to choke out one word. "Okay," a thin, reedy sound in the dark. He felt the pressure of the object, the muzzle of a gun push his head forward slightly, and then he heard the quiet creak of his window sliding shut. A moment later, he was alone in the darkness. After that night, the fear didn't leave. It just settled into a cold, persistent dread. For the next few months, until they finally moved, Adam and his brother were constantly looking over their shoulders. Almost every night, Adam would catch them. From the corner of his window, he'd see Todd or Eric standing at a certain window in their house, across the lawns, just staring into his room, or his brother's. Just two dark shapes watching them in the dark. Their harassment escalated the closer it got to their move date. One night, about a week before they left, a rock slammed against Adam's window at 1 a.m. He was awake instantly. Trembling, he slowly cracked the window open, just enough to peek out. In the faint glow of the streetlights, he saw Todd standing by the corner of their garage, his arm raised. He was aiming something small and dark up at Adam's window. A pistol. Adam didn't think. He dove off his bed and hit the floor, scrambling under his desk. A split second later, he heard two boys erupt in hysterical laughter. They didn't fire. One of them, the voice carrying clearly in the dead of night, called him a fucking retard. There were two more instances of harassment that week. A dark figure pressed against their kitchen window. A strange phone call that only contained static and heavy breathing. When the moving truck finally pulled away from that curb, it felt less like they were changing houses and more like they were escaping something genuinely evil. Adam and his brother never told anyone. Not their parents. Not the police. No one. They were 15 and 10, and the threats had been too real, too terrifying to risk. All these years later, Adam still occasionally caught himself looking over his shoulder at night. Those boys were pure trouble, and he knew, without a doubt, that moving out of that neighborhood saved his family from something truly terrible. What lurks next door? This happened a few months ago, after Caleb and his wife got a new neighbor. At first, he was relieved, because their old neighbors were a pain. Now, he'd take the old ones back in a heartbeat. The first sign that something was off was the van. One morning, a beat-up white van with tinted windows was just sitting in the driveway next door. No moving truck, no furniture piled on the lawn, no workers, just the van. It was weirdly sudden and discreet. Caleb and his wife, trying to be friendly, went over that afternoon to introduce themselves. They knocked. They rang the bell. Nothing. The van was clearly there, but nobody answered. They figured maybe the new neighbor was showering or sleeping off a long drive, and they let it go. A few days passed, and the van was gone all day. That night, Caleb and his wife were upstairs reading in bed. Their bedroom window faced the side of the house, giving them a clear view into their neighbor's backyard, specifically his detached garage. Around 11 p.m., they heard the unmistakable rattling sound of a garage door opening. Naturally, Caleb was curious. He crept up to the window and pushed the blinds apart a few inches. The motion light over the garage had flicked on, illuminating the scene. There he was, a middle-aged guy in a white t-shirt and jeans. He was pulling dark, heavy-looking boxes out of the van and hustling them into the garage. He worked fast, almost aggressively. Caleb watched for a moment, then backed away from the window before it got creepy. Over the next few nights, the pattern continued. The van would be gone during the day, and then the garage door would open late at night. One night, Caleb woke up around 1 a.m. He could hear odd sounds coming from the garage next door. At first, it was just the banging of boxes dropping. But then came a persistent metallic scraping sound that didn't stop. It was a rhythmic shh, chunk, shh, chunk, shh, chunk that made his skin crawl. It didn't sound like moving boxes. He got out of bed and went to the window again. He carefully creased the blinds and peered out. The garage light was on. The scraping sound stopped the moment he looked. The neighbor was standing in the open garage doorway looking straight up. He must have seen the light shift through the blinds, and he was looking directly at Caleb's window. A wave of intense awkwardness washed over him. He'd been caught red-handed spying. Caleb quickly stepped away from the window. Seconds later, he heard the sound of the garage door slamming shut. He turned to his wife. "I've got to go say hi," he told her. "That was so awkward. I have to break the tension." He threw on a pair of shorts and a t-shirt and walked outside. He went up the driveway, ready with a cheerful, "Hey, sorry about that. Just wanted to introduce myself." But the man was already in his van, the engine running. The second he saw Caleb step toward the driveway, he threw the van into reverse and peeled out onto the street, disappearing into the darkness without even a glance back. He was actively avoiding him. Now Caleb was genuinely curious, and his curiosity was quickly turning into unease. What was the man doing in there? He walked over to the side of the house and into the backyard toward the garage. He could still hear a faint noise coming from inside, a thumping sound, like something large and heavy was moving around and hitting the walls. His first thought was that the man had a trapped animal in there, but the sound had a desperate quality to it. Caleb leaned closer to the door, trying to make sense of the muffled thumps. Then, he heard his wife's panicked whisper from their upstairs window. "What the hell are you doing?" He looked up, put a finger to his lips, and then tried the handle on the garage door. It was locked. That was enough. He was trespassing and being creepy himself. He went back inside. Later that night, the fear came to their own door. Caleb woke up to his wife shaking him violently, whispering, her voice tight with panic. "I heard our backyard gate open. I swear I did." He tried to rationalize it. The wind, a stray animal. But the look on her face told him she wasn't messing around. He had to go check. First, he looked out the front window. Sure enough, the neighbor's van was back in the driveway. He was home. Caleb went downstairs and headed to the back door, turning on the porch light. As soon as the light flooded the yard, he heard it. The frantic sound of someone running. It was a heavy, fast sprint, and it was headed for the side of the house. Then, their backyard gate slammed shut. Pure adrenaline and anger took over. Caleb tore out the back door, through the gate, and sprinted to the front of the house and onto the street. The street was empty, completely silent. He stood there for a minute, heart hammering in his chest, looking around at every shadow and darkened window. He was alone, but he had that undeniable, terrifying feeling of being watched. He went back inside, confirmed to his wife that someone had been in their yard, and she asked the question he couldn't answer. Was it him? The next morning, Caleb went next door to talk to Jean, their neighbor 2 houses down. Jean had been there for years. Caleb told him everything. "I haven't met the guy," Jean said, "but yeah, I'm always getting woken up by those weird scraping and banging noises coming from his garage late at night. It's constant." They agreed to text each other next time they heard anything and go over together. It was Saturday morning. As Caleb was opening the living room blinds, he saw the impossible. The van was in the driveway during the day. He looked up at the house, and there he was, standing stiffly at his window looking directly at Caleb's. He wasn't leaning or peeking. He was just standing there, an unmoving, silent statue. He had been waiting for Caleb to open the blinds. They locked eyes. For a solid 20 seconds, he held the stare. No expression, no curiosity, just a dead, unbroken lock. A chill ran down Caleb's spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. He tried to wave, just a small, nervous gesture. The man didn't acknowledge it. He didn't blink. Caleb backed away from the window and frantically called his wife over. Look, as right there." But when she got there, he was gone. The window was empty. Caleb and his wife looked at each other. This was beyond odd. It was menacing. They grabbed Jean and his wife, and the four of them went back to the new neighbor's door and knocked, hard and assertively. From inside the house, they heard one single, loud slam. That was it. No footsteps, no voice, no answer. Gene's eyes went wide. "Wait, did you check your phone?" he asked. Caleb hadn't brought it. Gene pulled out his own. He'd been trying to text Caleb late last night, after the runner incident. I heard a muffled crying sound coming from his side of the house. Gene whispered, his voice hushed. It sounded like someone was trying to scream into a pillow. It freaked me out. That was the last piece of the puzzle that tipped them all over the edge. Metallic scraping, loud thumping, a figure running from their yard, and now muffled crying. The next day, the white van was gone. It's been almost 2 weeks now, and it hasn't returned. They don't know his name or where he went. But every night now, either Caleb or his wife will wake up, convinced they hear the sounds again. The first thing they do is creep to the window, half dreading, half hoping to see that van. It hasn't appeared yet. Caleb doesn't know what was making noise in that garage, but he's convinced it was alive. And whatever the man was doing wasn't good. They've talked about it, and Caleb thinks they need to make an anonymous report to the police. Something seriously wrong happened in that house, and the thought that the man is just going to come back one night is chilling. My neighbor watches at night. Noah had bought a vacation mobile home a couple of months ago, an absolute shack on 2 acres of land outside the city. It was supposed to be his quiet escape, 10 minutes from the mountain he liked to snowboard on. Peaceful, isolated, that was the appeal. The first time he went up was to furnish the place. His family came with him, and they spent a chaotic weekend driving back and forth in his dad's pickup, hauling couches and tables from local outlets. All that commotion must have been noticeable. On Saturday, a guy walked over from the house up the road and introduced himself as Dale. He was exactly what Noah had pictured. Weathered, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt, with a thick Hudson Valley accent that made him sound like he was perpetually chewing gravel. He seemed nice enough at first. They shook hands, exchanged names, and Noah knew he was the one who needed to make a good impression since he was the new guy. But after the introductions, Dale didn't leave. He lingered, just standing there, arms crossed, watching them as they sweated, unloading heavy furniture. Noah's dad tried to keep the small talk going, filling the awkward silence. Eventually, Dale just said a flat goodbye and walked back up the road. It was a little weird, but Noah chalked it up to him being a lonely local. 2 weeks later, Noah went back up alone. He needed to bring his gear and set up the Wi-Fi. He guessed Dale had seen his car because no sooner had he gotten inside than Dale knocked on the open door, or rather, just called Noah's name, stepped inside, and said, "Hello." "Place is looking nice," Dale said. He looked around for a minute, then invited Noah over for a beer. Noah figured, why not? He needed to know his neighbor. He followed Dale to his place, another mobile home, and they sat on his deck. Dale handed him a Heineken. Noah started trying to get to know him. "How long have you been here?" Noah asked. Dale's response, 20 years too long. That set the tone. All Dale's answers were variations of pessimistic, slightly hostile jokes. Then he started asking Noah questions. What brought him here? Where he was from? Noah told him Queens, that he wanted to escape the city and snowboard. Dale didn't like that answer. Not one bit. His face tightened, and he launched into a fiery rant about you city folk coming up and ruining shit, polluting and littering. Noah tried to defend himself and other vacation homeowners, framing it as a light debate. But Dale was getting heated, his voice rising, his heavy accent thick with anger. It escalated so fast that at one point he yelled, word for word, "I don't know why y'all can't just stay where the F you belong." That was Noah's cue. He stood up, forced a smile, and said, "Okay, I think I'm gonna head back now. Thanks for the beer." Dale didn't say a word, just stared down into his half-drunk beer as Noah walked away. Noah was maybe 100 feet up the road when he heard Dale yell, "Sorry!" He gave a weak thumbs up over his shoulder and kept walking. His heart was pounding. He tried to justify it. The guy was probably lonely, isolated, and losing his mind. Noah told himself he'd just avoid him. That night, Noah was lying on a mattress on the floor watching a movie on his laptop. Around midnight, he heard a voice outside. It was faint, but definitely there, sounding like someone cursing to themselves. He hit pause and looked out the window. It was pitch black outside. His 2 acres were mostly dark woods. He couldn't see anything, which somehow made it worse. Hearing an angry voice in the total blackness of the woods on his property was instantly terrifying. He went to bed trying to put it out of his mind. The next day, around midday, he heard his name being called, followed by insistent knocking on the door. It was Dale. Noah absolutely did not want to deal with him, so he just stayed in his bedroom, silent. Dale knocked for a solid 5 minutes, which felt like an eternity. Then, his voice got sharp. "I know you're in there. Your car is here." That sent a cold jolt of paranoia through Noah. It wasn't just a friendly follow-up. It felt obsessive and slightly threatening. He stayed quiet. Dale finally left. Or so Noah thought. He spent the rest of the day indoors, too uncomfortable to go outside in case Dale was lurking nearby, watching to see if he was actually home and just ignoring him. That evening, after dinner, Noah was watching a movie when he heard the voice again, clear enough to cut through the sound from the TV. He shut the TV off, peered out, and still couldn't see anything. Noah was done with the games. He went out onto the small deck and flicked on the deck light. His blood ran cold. There was Dale, standing about 5 feet into the woods, arms stiff at his sides. He was absolutely motionless, caught like a deer in the headlights. The second he realized the light had exposed him, he sprinted into the trees, disappearing instantly. He was watching Noah. He had been waiting. Noah ran inside and locked the door, his heart pounding a panicked rhythm against his ribs. He considered calling 911, but he knew his dad would tell him to hold off. He called him anyway. His dad was rational. Once you call the cops on your neighbor, you can never go back there and feel safe. Pack your stuff and come home. Stay away for a month. Noah tried to sleep. Within an hour of lying back down on the mattress, a furious scream ripped through the night air. Dale was right outside his mobile home. "City piece of S. I know you're in there. Leave! No one wants you here." It was a drunken, enraged howl. That was the moment Noah stopped viewing Dale as a lonely crank and realized he was a dangerous, unhinged psychopath. He understood why he got the property for such a good price. It probably came with an angry, territorial neighbor. He was gone first thing the next morning, taking every valuable thing with him. He hasn't been back. The next time Noah goes, he's bringing his whole family and maybe a few friends. He's seriously considering selling the place, because right now, he's genuinely scared to be alone on his own property. Noah had bought an escape, and instead, he had bought a problem.